It's 5 o'clock in London, midday in New York, 1 a.m. in Hong Kong, 4 a.m. in Sydney, 9 a.m. in San Francisco, and 10:30 at night in Mumbai. Greetings, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world today. My name is Patrick L. Young. The IPO-VID live stream, Series 34, Episode 5, which is episode number 203 in the aggregate, starts here. And we open today, ladies and gentlemen, with some sad news. My dear friend, James Olaf, as the futures industry is going to be gathering in Boca for the annual FIA Fest next week, it's time to recall a man I was happy to propose for the Hall of Fame in 2023, along with a myriad of Jim's many associates. A true capital market revolutionary of the first order, former CME Deputy Chairman James E. Olaf, my longtime friend, a co-conspirator in advancing, demutualizing and enhancing markets technologically, has passed away after a long spell with cancer. I can't quite emote just how good a man Jim was. I have endeavored in a tribute, which we have enclosed the link to try and explain why I feel he is a figure market historians will forget at their peril, as his contribution to markets as a whole, and his beloved CME in particular, deserves to be remembered. On behalf of the Exchange Invest team, our condolences to Jim's wonderful wife, Margot, and his wide, huge, broad, and much-loved family. Meanwhile, we've been running our regular review of Young's Pyramid. Catch this in Exchange Invest with edited highlights on our social fields. The key takeaway, a late quarter towards the end of the year helped CME establish itself back at the top of Tier 1, the end of the ice age, as it were, it would seem to many. Meanwhile, talking of ice ages, a late February snowstorm caused cancellations of over 5,000 flights, closed schools and government offices, caused New York to come to shutdown, except in certain areas, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm so proud to say that area was markets. Congratulations to IEX, to ICE, to NYSE, to NASDAQ, on all managing 100% uptime during a point when the rest of New York City was absolutely in a big freeze. There's a frequent deluge on markets when they fail, often through no fault of their own technologically. Once upon a time, the fact that New York Stock Exchange would be closing the entire US marketplace would lead to be closed with it. That led to a bid from ICE, which of course caused a scintillating improvement on Wall Street's epicenter, leading us into this incredible golden age of perfect competition between NASDAQ and NYSE. Congratulations to all the exchanges on moving smoothly through this very chilly patch. Altogether, a great congratulations as well to all those people in that triangle all the way up to Secaucus and Mahwah in New Jersey for the great efforts that they managed to put together. The lack of downtime in a major storm is great to see and makes us proud of all our fellow parishioners. Exchange Invest salutes you all. And indeed, ladies and gentlemen, that gives us a beautiful segue into one of those organizations with zero downtime during the course of this worrisome point. That was, well, rain, hail or shine. NASDAQ has been sponsoring us this quarter with a wonderful ad. Investor appetite for Asia is rising. Post-trade friction is holding markets back. In the new NASDAQ and Value Exchange study, 25% of participants plan to grow exposure, yet 46% face artificial trading limits. The biggest pain point, corporate actions. 60% report high error rates and 39% of platforms are still legacy. You can catch that report online because the fix is clear. Harmonize rules, standardize workflows, modernize technology in order to unlock efficiencies in settlement and corporate actions. For exchange leaders ready to scale, download Creating Asia's Post-Trade Operating Model of Tomorrow at bit.ly APAC-post-trade. That's B for Bravo, I for India, T for Tango, L for Limo, Y for Yankee, / A for Alpha, P for Patrick, A for Alpha, C for Charlie, P for Patrick, Peter, whatever you want to call it, O for Oscar, S for Sierra, T for Tango once again, R for Romeo, A for Alpha, D for Delta, and E for Echo. Moving on from what has been quite an incredibly epic week in the parish, I'm delighted to welcome back our guest today, Dan Davis. The topic, predicting the future of market tech. Dan Davis is a man who, along with his firm EP3 by Connamara Technologies, had a landmark year in 2025 and a hot start to 2026. fabulous to see so many new markets being developed in so many exciting worlds. And this is why, of course, we're discussing predicting the future this week on the show.
It's great to be here, Patrick. Honored to be on episode 203.
A joy to see you. Really a joy to see you all together. Dan, you're the Chief Revenue Officer of the firm Connamara EP3. You're joining us to discuss current trends in exchange technology and exciting new clients that you've got. So just by means of introducing yourself, I know before you joined Connamara, you were a director of a B2B SaaS company. Prior to that, you helped PIMCO grow its then new office in Austin, Texas. So where are you coming to today, Dan?
Coming from Austin, Texas.
How marvelous altogether. That's a fabulous place to be in this wonderful world today. And of course, by the time we see this is being recorded, ladies and gentlemen. We've all got slightly frantic travel schedules during March. We are going to be showing this just under a week before the FIA Boca Raton conference starts, which of course you're going to be going to, as always, Dan. Exciting year for Connamara. You've got a lot to talk about.
My seersucker suit is ready to go, and I think we're really excited for FIA Boca this year. We're going to be returning and doing the pickleball sponsorship, which I think has over 70 attendees already, and then the croquet sponsorship, which is a new event for the festivities in Boca this year.
My goodness, croquet and pickleball, presumably not simultaneously, but certainly a very interesting series of events. Hopefully there won't be any prediction markets on it prone to insider trading. But I mean, speaking seriously, I mean, you've had an incredible year with the prediction market boom itself has really been very, very good for Connamara EP3, and you've got some serious presence in that area.
We have so much experience in this space, building exchanges and building markets, building now clearinghouses and doing market surveillance, that the macro tailwind of prediction markets, coming more and more online, we've been sort of the natural vendor that either sports books or new entrants into the market have looked at to really guide them through the process with the CFTC, or guide them through really creating that market structure and teams that can operate that market effectively.
Yeah, it's very interesting you mentioned that, because of course, I mean, one of the things that I think are deep in the DNA of Connamara, and from EP1 all the way to EP3, you have permanently been associated with very, very innovative markets. I mean, I'm thinking back obviously to that fabulous AFM Tech Day that you co-organized and sponsored alongside the AFM last year in Chicago, where I had the joy of chatting to Richard Sander, who himself has been a long time client of Connamara's various systems in order to bring forward his different initiatives in emissions markets, interest rate markets, etc. over the course of the last, going on for 2 decades he's been working with you.
We love working with visionaries like Richard. Creating Chicago Climate Exchange, American Financial Exchange with him was pivotal for us to create a product that allows you to build most of an exchange. I'd say typically 80% of an exchange is what we're offering. And of course, that's a bit tongue in cheek. You want 100%, but a lot of the value of what we're providing is for you to go from 80% to 100% very quickly. Visionaries like Richard aren't necessarily the technologists. We are bringing the financial plumbing to the dreams and the magic of these markets that people want to create.
Yeah, that's a very good point altogether, isn't it? And I mean, it's so fascinating because obviously your product within EP3 was born multifunctional, multivariable. You've got a huge degree of functionality that really you can handle, as far as I can see, pretty much anything.
The ability for it to be asset agnostic is so critical, because we don't know what assets are going to be traded in even this year or next year or in 10 years or 20 years, but we want to be able to support it. We're so passionate about opening up market access, helping bring products to market, helping investors have access that they haven't before, that we need to be able to provide very nominal and vanilla workflows that apply to any asset class out there.
That's a really, really valid point. And therefore, obviously, you've found yourselves in this fascinating niche, which is genuinely delivering innovative markets to people. So talk me through, I mean, we're going to talk about various of your clients during the course of today because they've all got such interesting bases. But let's go back to, as we're predicting the future of market technology, the topic that's in all the headlines at the moment, prediction markets. If only they'd been in the headlines 30 years ago when I was first working on them, but there you go. That's more's the pity. It's fascinating looking at prediction markets now and suddenly the rise from nowhere. Talk us a little bit through how you got involved in the early stages of this renaissance and final growth of the product into some degree of maturity.
Yeah, one of our early customers is called ForecastX. They're a subsidiary of Interactive Brokers, and David Downey was their CEO. He's no longer there, but pivotal founding member of the team and a close contact of our founder, Jim Downs. David was previously at One Chicago and has been, in the Chicago capital market scene for decades, just as Jim and our other co-founder, Maureen Downs, have been. So, they really introduced us into the power of markets with prediction markets and the ability for all that information to be compiled into a price of probability that becomes very clear for even kind of non-traditional financial participants. And, they have been, created a lot of information with the liquidity on their platform, maybe more around interest rates and elections. And the election in 2024 with them was pivotal for us in terms of just being able to see the information reflected very quickly into the price and probabilities of these markets, and just how people want to be able to participate in these type of markets. They talk about the democratization of alternatives nowadays, of private equity, of this and that. I mean, it is the democratization of everything as retail investors are getting more access to asset classes that they historically haven't, and that includes prediction markets and elections. Or ways to hedge other sorts of risk like interest rates.
Yeah, I mean, a fascinating situation altogether, because obviously you have had these pioneering interest rate markets at the American Financial Exchange with Doc Sander and so on. But also it's also therefore intriguing because you're talking about the prediction markets having been born, particularly with ForecastX. I mean, very strongly more of a retail phenomenon rather than an institutional one at the moment, whereas American Financial Exchange was 100% institutional as an enterprise. So the variability must be quite intriguing when you're trying to develop and implement the software for those processes.
We've built other markets that are just as interesting and are built for maybe different types of participants, and you need to meet your customers where you're at. We did an exchange called Materials Exchange. It was largely a lumber exchange, and the participants there are largely lumber manufacturers. They don't want to go into a Bloomberg terminal and or see a bunch of charts and widgets and gadgets when they're thinking about how can I get my lumber to market or sell it for the best price, or people that are buying that lumber want to be able to quickly and efficiently and be able to transact the ways that maybe they're sort of used to, but in a new or fresh wrapper. It can't be so different that it's too much for them to see, or they come into that marketplace and it becomes too complicated. If that UX as a participant is really complicated or tough to understand, then you haven't done a very good job of bringing along your participants and really being able to create that liquidity. So much about creating a marketplace is generating liquidity. You really need to meet your participants where you're at, and a lot of markets might seem obvious to be disintermediated, but I think the most successful exchanges, the most successful markets actually maybe do more of an augmentation, where it's how do they bring along the people that are already doing that business in a new way.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned it earlier, the way that you can manage to deliver simplified or at least user accessible workflows, because I think that's one of the biggest problems you see in a lot of these markets. Are they just look like gobbledygook when you put it together, and everybody's trying to explain it as some sort of an insider, whereas you've got to really be able to make the market as easy as possible to deliver. And that's obviously must be a fascinating position for you guys, because to look at another marketplace that you delivered recently, I mean, Electron-X, which is radically different way of looking at power markets compared to what we've seen previously in that burgeoning sector.
They Electronics is an awesome customer, such an awesome thesis. Our customers have no shortage of amazing ideas, but with Electronics, they're also looking to bring on maybe participants that historically haven't been, trading futures or looking to offload risk. And some of those are maybe newer asset classes, newer types of manufacturing or AI data centers, battery operators that want to be able to hedge the risks that they have in their business to power or to compute. And so we're seeing a lot of new assets out there that hedge those type of markets, power, compute, and Electronics is doing a great job of implementing that. I think the binary options are obviously very popular within prediction markets, but it's also just a much simpler contract or instrument for people that are newer to these markets to understand than maybe the futures or options historically have been. So really excited about what they're doing. And as somebody that lives in Texas, I can't trade on the exchange, but I am glad that other Texans are now able to hedge their power risk through the ERCOT contracts that Electronics has listed on their platform.
Yeah, so just walk us through. I'm not expecting you to be expert in Electronics in any way, but just for the benefit of the user who's not heard of Electronics so far, if I understand it correctly, they're effectively delivering a sort of a cash market means for you to have a finite hedge, insurance, derivative, however you want to call it, which you can basically buy straight off in order to manage to lock in power prices within US markets.
That's right. And I think right now there's only so many grids or power markets. There's not a national power market. So they've started with and I don't know what the acronym is exactly, but the Texas Power Grid is called ERCOT, as at least the acronym is. And so that's largely what the contracts are currently on Electronics. And I believe they published, the forward-looking 24-hour periods and 1-hour strips, and just trying to simplify again that contract as much as possible, and looking at the forecasting that's published by ERCOT versus what the actual use of power on the grid is.
Yeah, and I mean it's so interesting because you jump from there, and then you've also got, I mean, I don't mean to be presumptive and described as plain vanilla, but markets that are much more conventional, where you've been delivering to the likes of Bursa Malaysia in Kuala Lumpur with stuff that is normal, run of the mill, wondrous derivatives contracts and so on.
Yeah, I think I'm so excited by markets. That even calling something vanilla, I love vanilla. I love vanilla ice cream. I love vanilla markets. I mean, this is the nature of our business and what we do, and being able to provide the best vanilla ice cream, the best vanilla type of market is something we really pride ourselves in. So Bursa Malaysia has been a great customer. They list their government sovereign bonds on our platform, single stock futures on EP3, and yeah, they've been a great customer for us.
Yeah, and I mean, it's very interesting because I agree with you. I mean, the whole point about vanilla is it's the basis of so many wonderful concoctions you can build on top. And that's not to deprecate the sovereign bond market. And actually look at sovereign bonds for so long. So few of them were traded on exchanges. Even to this day, vast amounts of the US Treasury market is still being traded between broker-dealers, et cetera, rather than platforms. And it's been a great revolution of the course of the last 20 years to see the exchange world coming back into the bond business so strongly in emerging and also first world rich markets, which is therefore developing a great platform to add the stuff on top of the vanilla ice cream of sovereign bonds, and therefore enable stuff like single stock futures and so on. And that is quite intriguing. It must be very exciting for you having customers across, I mean, at the moment you're across what, 3 continents at least, if not more?
Yeah, I think we're now in 4 continents. We'd love to get an installation in Antarctica. So if you know anybody, please let us know. I think that might require a few different resources, but we're willing to test it out. We have customers in Brazil, Malaysia, the Netherlands. We've been expanding both in the technology sense and also across the globe in a big way in 2025. And maybe vanilla for clearing or for settlement it takes different flavors across the world, and we're pretty confident that what we're providing is the same vanilla that you're going to get in the U.S., that you're going to get in Europe, that you're going to get in Asia. There's other vendors that have maybe more disparate systems or have bought other providers that they're sort of keeping alive, but we're in market with one offering, not operating in our own exchange, and we really put that effort, that we would have to have for running that kind of business. We put that effort, back into our customers, and we're really excited by the things that they're coming up with, the roadmap that they've helped us craft, and what we have for 2026.
It's really, really fascinating because, you are going the whole gamut from what SME stock markets in Brazil with B4 right the way through to some cutting edge, electronics, which is definitely a cutting edge power market, even as it's a cash product, but not a derivative. And then also, of course, all of these prediction markets, which are growing with such gusto at the moment, and particularly interesting. ForecastX, if I remember correctly, is essentially backed by IBKR. You can't get a much better brand name than that from the world of brokerage at all.
Yeah, and ForecastX doesn't have a front end like many of the prediction markets like we see today, like a Kalshi or a Polymarket US. It's all intermediated business through interactive brokers, which might go to also, like a Robinhood or other FCMs or other brokers in the space. They're a really good customer. I wish we could talk more about some of the customers that we can't disclose today, but we're doing a lot within this space. Anybody going in front of the CFTC is typically building their own technology or using us, and most people are not building their own technology. So we're glad to be a resource. There's just been such a wave of new exchanges, of clearinghouses, and not to say that we enabled all of that, but we'd like to think that we've been a small piece of helping perpetuate the proliferation of exchanges and clearinghouses in the U.S.
Fantastic. Great news in the age of the exchange. And I'm sure there are a lot of other parties who are very happy, given the fact that I think you're in stealth mode on the better part of a dozen different markets or platforms at the moment, which is absolutely incredible to see the development pipeline for Connamara EP3. I'm here talking to Dan Davis. He's the Chief Revenue Officer of Connamara EP3. It's a recorded show today, but we're a week out from the Boca Raton FIA event, where I do believe both Jim Downs, the co-founder of the company, and Dan are going to be amongst the Connamara EP3 staff. Very, very busy talking to new, existing, and indeed pending possible clients. It's going to be a very, very exciting conference for you. You won't get much time to spend even a second looking at the beach, I imagine, Dan.
Probably not, although I am guilty of waking up early and perusing the grounds at FIA Boca. So if you see me in the lazy river going for a dip, then that may or may not be me. So yeah, we're really excited. It's not only our customers that we talk to at these type of events, but anybody in the exchange ecosystem. Our customers are often coming to us as the first stop for building a venue. So they need market data providers, they need brokers, they need maybe a different clearinghouse or banks to work with on the settlement side, or funding sources to onboard customers and accounts. And we have such a great Rolodex from working with those type of participants of the ecosystem, just through our customers, through going to events like these, that if we can make those introductions earlier to venues or people that are looking to create venues, then it just accelerates the time to market for them, and maybe vets the vendors a little bit more, knowing that we've already worked with certain ones. But we are all about finding the right tool for our customers. So we don't sign partnership agreements. We don't have referral programs. We really want to make sure that the people that we're introducing our customers to are just the right fit for our customers.
Yeah, and obviously customer fit's important, but also having, I think, that DNA of always being innovating has got to be a great plus for those who come in with Connamara EP3, because essentially, I wouldn't say you've seen everything before, but it's not too difficult to go, well, that new product kind of looks like something we've already done in whole or part.
I hate to trivialize markets because these technologies are very complex, but to your point, you can kind of boil it down to say, what do you really need to create a market? And our best keyword is probably matching engine, and that's where there's so many sports books looking at our type of technology to say, what are we missing to become a prediction market? And it is the matching, right?
Yeah.
So being able to provide that is really just key to any sort of secondary market. But I'd be remiss not to talk about our some of our other market mechanisms. So if you're looking to generate liquidity with doing things like user-defined spreads, or as they're now being called, combos, or parlays, as sportsbooks have historically called them. We do offer RFQ, and that's really the way, or request for quote, that's really the way that these exchanges and prediction markets are going about shaping those types of offerings. Sportsbooks have done such a really incredible job of creating a user experience that perpetuates liquidity and perpetuates just the virality of these contracts, that we're all ears on implementing the features and functionality that they want to be able to develop when it comes to creating product that people love, or people keep coming back for. So we maybe in kind of a similar breath, another market mechanism that we would support is auctions. Auctions are kind of viral by nature, right? There's a time urgency to them, but within Brazil, we have a customer that does primary issuance of small, medium enterprise businesses and rolls that into a secondary market. So being able to IPO companies on our technology is really exciting for us. I've been in the room of syndicate desks in New York, and just to see the amount of people that work on a syndicate or a pre-IPO listing, and what it takes to get the just the consortium around creating that listing is quite expensive. There's a lot of transaction costs, a lot of friction, and being able to do that. And the other option of going and raising capital through private equity maybe isn't as attractive anymore, or going through venture capital and giving away some of your business, where we'd like to think that our technology is a great way for people in or the small and medium enterprise businesses in Brazil to raise assets without having to go down maybe some of those traditional routes that are very cost intensive.
Yes. Well, again, it's all a case of, isn't it, being able to simplify the workflow, but being able to then deliver the complexity of the technology that's needed for these many processes. And I hear you completely. I'm all for wonderful matching engines in so many different ways. But the thing that we really do need in certain particular places is the delivery of auctions, because they're the best way to inject transaction volume and also liquidity into what can often be very, very illiquid instruments, but it's a building block to move us forward. Of course, one of the problems we have with illiquidity, I'm here discussing the technology of, well, the prediction of technology via prediction markets and more, as delivered by Connamara EP3 with their Chief Revenue Officer, Dan Davis. And markets always hit a hurdle when, of course, we have protectionism. And in that instance, here's this week's short video where Beijing is restricting silver exports, but at the same time, there could be cooling demand anyway. Meanwhile, in Big World, following on from our conversation the other day about China and its pulls of silver exports, there's also an interesting possible Communist Party kink in there. Could it be the ban on silver exports was driven by a central planning approach to resource management, which in and of itself made sense on the data sent to that government department? However, when viewed holistically, other news from Beijing proposing swinging output cuts for electric vehicle manufacturers as inventories have swollen suggests that perhaps the silver demand going forward may not be quite as strong as it appears. For more in Big World, like or follow. The perils of the silver market there. Of course, gold and silver having been wildly exciting in recent weeks. I see also Turkey's looking at a new gold exchange. That was a story we covered in Exchange Invest. If you want to look at the water cooler of the bourse business, don't forget, drop by exchangeinvest.com. Sign up for your free 7-day trial, and you can understand and appreciate and become a member of the exchange of information all about the bourse business. On weekends, we also have a free publication, more of a macro read about the world in general, exchangeinvest.com. You can sign up for that. And in that publication, occasion, every Saturday, we deliver our book of the week for the first time. This week's book is actually the book, one of the earlier books of our last guest, Igor Pajic, who we had a great discussion about technology investing with last week. Blockchain Babel, the crypto craze and the challenge to business, is the ultimate guide to blockchain as a disruptive technology. One of the very, very first true benchmark books in the arena. You can catch that book on Amazon and all of their major bookstores right now. And don't forget, once again, if you want to both support this particular stream and also get all of the news on the Bourse business, you want to be able to subscribe to Exchange Invest, only $499 per user a year, much cheaper than a Bloomberg terminal, and also more expensive to replicate via AI than is the current case with Bloomberg terminals. Anyway, join us at the Exchange of Information, exchangeinvest.com. Back to Dan Davis, Chief Revenue Officer of Connamara EP3. We're having a great conversation today about the wonders of markets, a week out from the FA Boca Raton conference, where hopefully if you're at Boca Raton, you'll be able to indulge in the pickleball or the croquet, sponsored by Connamara EP3, presumably not simultaneously. And one thing I don't think there will be a prediction market on either, although I'm sure there will be a lot of fevered speculation, at least of the vocal kind. Now, Dan, when we're looking, I mean, you've got this fantastic board behind you, which I think has just been prepared, ready to take to the Boca Resort. Looking really, really good there. Reminding us that EP3, oh, I have to say that's fantastic. That's in your best possible sense of, soon you'll get a briefcase and you'll be able to do Wheel of Fortune or something. You've got the EP3 exchange matching engine. You've got really a complete suite, though, of product, which is something that people don't readily appreciate these days because, of course, you came out of building those matching engines, but through dozens, if not hundreds of different consulting projects and advisory projects, you've built an incredible suite of software to essentially cover everything that a market might need across pretty much every kind of asset class.
Yeah, you know, the one thing that we don't, don't license or aren't in market with is a front end, you know, and maybe the trading screen itself. There's a lot of other vendors out there, a lot that we work with that are great. And a lot of times that's where maybe the secret sauce is or the user experience is for our customers, and they want to build that. And that's maybe the puzzle piece that might be missing from EP3, but we do have a lot of customers that just go through brokers and end up on those markets end up on the screens of brokers through those integrations. So, EP3 is really just three pieces of core technology that we're talking about. It's the EP3 exchange, which is the matching engine that we've talked about, but a lot of the pre-risk controls, post-trade controls that you need and when you're operating an exchange. And of course, when you're talking about post-trade, the clearing is a big part of that. EP3 clearing is something that we've developed and now licensed to lots of our customers. We've already licensed it 3 times this year. So we're seeing more and more exchanges and DCMs here in the US want to apply as a dual applicant, want to own the clearinghouse model as well. When it's fully collateralized, like many of these prediction markets are, it's maybe not quite the same level of risk or that you'd expect when you're dealing with margin or other types of risk. So, I think that's just another reason that DCMs for some of these prediction markets in particular have gone and looked to implement the DCO technology as well. You get to control more of your destiny, own more of the technology stack, and we're here for that. So I think you mentioned that maybe people don't appreciate all that we offer, but we're certainly having a lot more venues understand and appreciate what we do offer, and even our own customers. We've grown our footprint tremendously with our own customers that we're just licensing our exchange technology, and now they're licensing our clearing technology, or now I've moved on to using our market surveillance. But those three pieces are really core to our business: EP3 exchange, EP3 clearing, and EP3 market surveillance.
It's such a fascinating suite altogether. And of course, changing gears slightly, you had the opportunity to showcase both your products, your customers, but also have a great industry conversation last November, actually, wasn't it, in Chicago, when you hosted the AFM, the Association of Futures Markets Tech Day. That was a super event altogether, I've got to say. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do a fireside chat with the fabulous Dr. Richard Sander. It was really interesting to see the interaction between a lot of quite traditional commodity exchanges from the AFM membership, also talking to some of the bleeding edge clients that are working with Connemara EP3.
Yeah, that's right. Man, we have the entire spectrum that showed up for that event, and we love being able to help provide those types of spaces to share best practices and to push markets and technology for markets forward. So we'll continue to do that. We completely geek out on this kind of stuff, so much less of trying to create a commercial or promoting our business, but just creating that space for us to have these conversations, for our customers to have these conversations, for markets in general to have these kind of conversations and share how we can best support each other. Because as you know, the Bourse world is very small, and the skill set for people that are creating markets is becoming even, I think, harder and harder to come by. People that really understand how to operate and keep the integrity of exchanges, clearinghouses, market surveillance operations in check. And if we can help educate newcomers or help pass along the knowledge of people like Richard Sandor, then I think that gives us just a lot of meaning in what we're doing as a business. And we really enjoyed you being able to get the best out of Doc Sandor and what he's thinking, and whether it's about what he's done in the past, or whether it's about thinking about the space debris markets of tomorrow.
Yeah, and I mean, that actually also reminds us that you can find that IPO vid from the Connamara AFM Tech Day is part of the IPO vid canon. Also, actually, I should say the co-founders of Connamara EP3, Jim and Maureen Downs, they gave us a fantastic conversation a couple of years back. It was, if I remember off the top of my head, IPO vid number 152. Those are particularly useful shows if you want to have a look at some stage, as well as Dan's various appearances, both on the panel and in his own right on this particular channel at different times. So, I mean, Dan, it is interesting. I have to say, I mean, it's not... we will be making a formal announcement in the near future, but I'm delighted to say that we're going to have the opportunity in autumn, fall to take over the baton that you left down so successfully at the Union League Club in Chicago last year. And we're looking forward to hosting the similar meeting for the AFM this year, because the opportunity to share that information, to discuss these things with all of our peer group is so important. And I'm really, really looking forward. I do hope we'll be able to welcome you to that event, and we'll have your support for it, because it was such a good event you ran last year in Chicago. And thank you once again for enabling me to have that great conversation with Richard Sandor, which, as I say, we portrayed, and I'm sure there's a link coming up here from the production team, in IPO-VID last year as well. So, I mean, when you look at these markets, you mentioned space debris, one of the things Richard Sandor's been talking about, and there's a lot of opportunities in outer space, but it is intriguing. You mentioned this kind of issue potentially with key operational staff to develop exchanges, and certainly there are some acute demands being made at the moment, given the whole new launching of prediction markets and all the other areas into which lots of people have been building different exchange-related models in recent times. What about the way technology is assisting with that? Because that's certainly something I think about with, say, your market surveillance product. It's something which both saves a huge amount of manpower time, but at the same point delivers a very, very high quality product that makes markets better and enhances market integrity.
Yeah, completely. Our market surveillance tool isn't just looking at the participants within the marketplace that are trading and looking for suspicious activity or irregular patterns, but it's also looking at the operations of the exchange itself. As far as identifying rogue operators or providing 4-eye checks so that there needs to be approvals on workflows through the exchange. We've seen exchanges blow up in the past for that has nothing to do with the participant activity, and it has everything to do with the integrity and controls of the exchange. So being able to provide operators with that confidence, and as well as the security to know that they're operating an exchange in a venue that is upholding all of that integrity and is really key for us and for them as well.
Yeah, and it's key to remember that unless, I suppose, you are a financial regulator in Antarctic, you can go to 4 continents and demonstrate a reference site somewhere in the purview of those regional regulators, which is always very useful. The Antarctic Exchange, you really got me thinking there. There's all sorts of things I could do. Certainly after the course of the last week, I don't think there'll be any problem with the data center after the temperatures they were experiencing in Secaucus and Mawa. They'll be ready for the Antarctic without a problem. In fact, perfect place for a data center, isn't it? Instant cooling. It's just trying to get your machines up to operating temperature is probably the major achievement at the start of operations. So when you look at this sort of stuff, I mean, it is intriguing, isn't it? Because essentially we're reaching the point in Bourse world where pretty much everything is moving towards an exchange model. I mean, I call it the age of the exchange, because what you're talking about is electricity, energy. You've got a growth in small, medium enterprise and equity and bond markets, which a lot of people thought that was saturated. And yet we've seen very, very strong growth at the regional and local entity level. People like Doc Sander have produced, whether it's space debris ideas, but also they've revolutionized the way that we look at interest rate trading in recent times. And I mean, those sort of risk-related benchmarks, I think, are going to be hugely important once we can manage to move those discussions forward at a regulatory level as well and get wider acceptance. I'm just wondering, I mean, is there any product that's ever walked in the door of Connamara EP3? You don't have to name the product, and you've actually looked at it and thought, no, I don't think this is going to work.
I hear some crazy ideas, and I love crazy ideas. I love thinking about how we would implement them on EP3. Maybe a secondary market isn't always the best for creating sort of that initial offering as a venue, and that's why I love auctions as a different way to maybe create a bit more virality or to try a proof of concept for what a marketplace could look like. RFQs are also a great way to do that, to have pricing, but not necessarily have to have liquidity out there without some sort of interest. So certainly seen some products that I might not think would be real successful in market, but that's not really our job. And if it was up to me, I don't know that my track record would be all that great predicting what assets would do well within markets. And what we really care about is just providing the technology that it's not a technology problem. And we'd like to think that creating markets for new assets today is not a technology problem with what we're providing. It's much more of a go-to-market type of problem, which is finding the right liquidity. It's being able to market it successfully, and it's being able to I guess have some sort of funding behind it. While it's certainly gotten much cheaper to start an exchange, it's still expensive, and it's still difficult. We're looking to make it cheaper and easier with our product, but there's still barriers for people to create exchanges. Legislation, as you had mentioned, fundraising, being able to find those kind of natural buyers and sellers for their marketplace.
That, I think, is an absolutely splendid surmise. And also, the thing I take away from this is the fact that no matter what you've been approached with, there's not been a difficulty so far in somehow or other breaking down those workflows and turning something into a product that you can manage to list and trade using different elements of your software, no matter how complex the actual instrument may be.
I'd love to be challenged on that front. So if anybody watching this has instruments that they think might be difficult to list on exchanges, I'd love to talk to them and really suss that out. I mean, like I said earlier, we're such nerds for this type of technology and what it can do and what price discovery, price transparency can do for economies and developing markets and developing assets that we're really passionate about moving that forward. So if there are maybe contenders out there for hard to implement exchange traded products, we'd love to talk to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the gauntlet is down. Connamara EP3 are ready, no matter what the complexity, no matter how difficult you think it may be. They're ready to define your workflow and help you build that market for the future. And in that way, I suppose we are predicting the future of market technology, which has been the topic of our discussion today. Dan, you've been asked this question several times, but I think this revolution is such a moving feast. I'm going to ask you again. Dan Davis, today, just a week out from Boca Raton, and in fact, I see that amazingly enough, I've even got my Boca Raton pen in front of me today, quite coincidentally. Where do you think the capital market revolution goes next?
Yeah, well, you can't predict the future, but you can trade on it now, which is, I think, really exciting. I think that, retail is just going to continue to become a bigger piece of this, whether it's where risk is allocated or, how exchanges are bringing on business or, how products are getting adopted. They're becoming maybe more looking like institutional or more looking like a pro-tail user where, as somebody can vibe code an algorithm that will allow them to trade. I mean, it's unprecedented times when it comes to trading and access. And yeah, we hope we can move that forward. I mean, that's one prediction that I guess I do feel pretty good about, is that we're going to be here and we're going to be here to move along markets and empower exchange and exchange operators.
Here to empower exchange operators, predicting that there certainly are going to be a great deal more markets in the future. That has been a fantastic show with Dan Davis, Chief Revenue Officer of Connamara EP3. Catch him next week at the Boca Raton Resort with the FIA conference, where in between the croquet and the pickleball, he'll be at the cutting edge, the bleeding edge of technology for whatever market you wish to build. This show has been predicting the future of market technology. Delighted to have Dan Davis of Connamara EP3 here to discuss so many pulsating and interesting different platforms. Thank you very, very much to our production team today, Marianne, Natalie, and Racy. We're going to be back next week, slightly different show. It's going to be an opportunity to talk about economics and indeed talk about the dismal science in all its dismal facets in many ways. It's an upbeat show, though, ladies and gentlemen. You will enjoy it. What's wrong with economics, economists, and the economy with Professor John Kern in the UK. And we're looking forward to chatting with Professor John Hearn next week, as well as we've discussed wondrous things about technology this week with Dan Davis. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Patrick L. Young. Don't forget to catch us at the water cooler of the Bourse Business, exchangeinvest.com. so that you can enjoy the exchange of information, whether you're going to Boca Raton next week or not. In the meantime, I wish you all a great week in life and markets.